We are back live from Vegas, and Donald Trump is telling voters that the fix is in, claiming that there's rampant voter fraud in this country and that the election is rigged to favor Hillary Clinton.
They even want to try to rig the election at the polling booths. And believe me, there's a lot going on. Do you ever hear these people? They say there's nothing going on. People that have died 10 years ago are still voting.
That would be a problem. Former presidential candidate and Florida Senator Marco Rubio says not so fast.
This election's not being rigged. And I'm explaining to you why it's not being rigged in Florida and why I hope he stops saying that. Why he should stop saying that. We have 67 counties in the state, each of which conduct their own elections. I promise you there is not a 67-county conspiracy to rig this election.
Brian Mast is a disabled veteran who joins us. He's running for U.S. Congress in Florida. And thank you, Brian, for being here, and thank you for your service. Welcome to the program. I am curious what you think about. It's good to have you with us, as I said. Marco Rubio versus Donald Trump. Who's right?
I don't say that the election is rigged either. Rigged, to me, that implies that the outcome has already been determined. And I can tell you the outcome hasn't been determined. We have 3 weeks until the election is over. There's a lot that can come out between now and then. And I can tell just as well as anybody, when you're faced with a challenge, you got to overcome it. That's what you do. That's what we do as Americans. We overcome those challenges.
So in terms of, Donald Trump's argument is twofold. He does believe that there's the potential for fraud at the polls. He talks about elections where there have been instances where dead people's names showed up on the voter rolls, and we all know that those stories have existed. He also thinks that the press has rigged it against him, that they are overwhelmingly in favor of Hillary Clinton. Do you agree with that part of his argument?
Oh, I certainly wouldn't deny either of those statements. Voter fraud is something that any one of us that's running for office, me included, it's one of those problems that we face. Whether you're talking about people voting in multiple states, dead people voting, people that are not citizens that shouldn't be voting, these are problems that we face. Donald Trump certainly has an uphill battle when it comes to the media attacking him. I don't think that's been a secret since the very beginning. But again, it's just one of those challenges that you got to look at. You understand that it's part of the road that we're on, and you got to overcome it. You got to fight like you're in last place.
So speaking of that, let's go on to the troubled VA and a USA Today exclusive. The paper's reporting that the Veterans Administration has been shuffling managers around for years and calling that new leadership. VA Secretary Bob McDonald claims that 90% of medical centers have, quote, new leadership since 2014. But this report that came out from USA Today finds that the VA has hired just 8 medical center directors who are from outside the agency during that time. Out of the 140 new directors, just 92 are actual new hires. And of those, only 69 are permanent. So the numbers do not speak to the kind of overhaul and reform that Bob McDonald had promised, do they?
No, they don't at all. This report is so upsetting to me. The VA, obviously, something that's very, very personal to me. I can tell you, I wish that at the time that Bob McDonald made those comments about the VA being similar to Disneyland, that was him essentially tendering his resignation. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. The VA is in dire need of a hero. They're in dire need of somebody to show some valor and some courage on behalf of the veterans that are serviced there, and he's proven that he's not the man to do it.
Brian Mast, thank you very much. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So we are back live from Vegas, but we want to take you to a live event where we are awaiting Donald Trump. He is about to speak at a rally in Colorado Springs today, and we will hear from him for the first time since the president made these comments about him whining about rigging elections. We'll see if Donald Trump has a reaction to that. Hillary Clinton's on her way here to Las Vegas. We saw her motorcade leaving earlier today. Both are in the last 24 hours. They're doing their final debate prep. She likes to sort of hunker down, and he likes to get out there with the crowd at a rally. We'll see how that prep works for them this time. Senior national correspondent John Roberts joins us. He is also here with us in Las Vegas, of course. So, John, tell us what's going on in the Trump campaign today.
Martha, good afternoon to you. Donald Trump continues to push this notion that the entire political system is rigged against him, claiming that there was collusion between the media and the Clinton campaign to deny him the White House, pointing to a recent study that found among journalists who give contributions to political campaigns, 96% of them donated to Hillary Clinton, while only 4% gave to Donald Trump. And then reports, research actually from the Pew Center for the states that show that dead people have voted in the past, and research from the Washington Post Post that suggests that non-citizens have voted in past elections as well. But just a short time ago, appearing with Italian Prime Minister Renzi, President Obama said basically what Donald Trump is talking about is just a bunch of hooey. Here's what the president said.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
Well, Donald Trump is not going to take the president's advice. In fact, when he takes the stage in Colorado Springs, I'm told that he's going to come out with a new line of attack on the political system being rigged. I asked a campaign person whether or not he would go after President Obama. That person said, Martha, he's not, because President Obama is not on the ballot. So that may indicate that Donald Trump is going to concentrate all of his fire in the next 24 hours on Hillary Clinton. Martha?
So he's got 21 days, John. Just a quick thought on how he may be trying to change the narrative that is surrounding him. He's talked a lot about this rigged election thing, and he's also had the problems with the issues on women.
He's got 21 days of the campaign, but he really only has 24 hours to change the narrative because he doesn't want to go through that entire debate talking about the allegations that those 9 women have leveled at him. So the campaign is out with a new ad today hitting Hillary Clinton on trade. Yesterday, Donald Trump put out 5 points for ethics reform in Washington, and he's also going very hard at the new disclosure from the FBI that the Undersecretary of State, Patrick Kennedy, it appears was trying to make a deal with the FBI, offering potentially a quid pro quo if the FBI were to change the classification of some of Hillary Clinton's emails that were on her private server. Here's what Donald Trump said about that last night in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
The Undersecretary of State, Patrick Kennedy, illegally pressured the FBI to unclassify emails from Hillary's illegal server. In other words, the State Department was trying to cover up Hillary's crimes of sending classified information on a server our enemies could easily access.
Here's one of the big reasons why Donald Trump has got to turn the narrative around. A new Monmouth poll here in the Silver State in Nevada. Hillary Clinton now up 7 points, 47-40. A lot of people believe that Donald Trump has got one last chance to make a good impression tomorrow night, and if he doesn't do it, if he can't get it off of the controversies and onto policy, Martha, he may never recover before Election Day.
Fascinating. John, thank you very much. So as John Roberts mentioned, Clinton's polling ahead of Trump here in the state of Nevada. It is one of the swingiest of the swing states, though, in the 2016 election. Look at that. What a trip it's been for them. She is up by 7 points, 47-40. She had a 4-point edge back in July, 45-41, until September when Donald Trump sprang into the lead, 44-42. But he does not enjoy that advantage anymore, according to the polls. Michael McDonald is chairman of the Nevada Republican Party. And you take issue with those numbers? Welcome. Good to have you with us.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.
What do you think?
Our inside polling doesn't show that. And we are in a battleground state. And it goes back and forth. You see how the ball keeps going from one side to the other. So I think the numbers are a lot closer than that. And our inside polls show different. But, where we're sitting right now, we're very confident for Mr. Trump.
Are you? Okay. Let's take a look at some of the inside numbers here because he has lost 10% with non-white voters. He had a peak of, he was at 63%. These are her numbers. She was at 63. Now she's at 67 with non-white voters. And look at how those numbers have changed so dramatically. Now let's go over to the younger voters, which is at the bottom there. She's at 55% to his number. And then they were tied. Sorry, I'm looking at my numbers here. They were tied at 41-40. What has happened with these younger voters who had them tied, and now it's 28-55?
I think a lot of the issues that younger voters are starting to look at, the millennials that we've been working with, they're starting to see that the message is getting back and forth. Again, this is a battleground state, so we're fine with it. I mean, where we're sitting right now, clearly we're working day and night to make sure we can switch the numbers. But we think the numbers are a lot closer from our polling.
Well, I guess you better hope so. That's your job as the Republican chair. So let's listen to what Melania Trump had to say when she decided to speak out after all of these allegations that have been swarming for the past couple of weeks. Here she is.
He was lead on, egg on, from the host to say dirty and bad stuff.
You feel the host, Billy Bush, was sort of egging him on?
Yes. Don't feel sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for me. I can handle everything.
Interesting.
She's a very strong woman. I think it's a great interview. She later first out that she was proposed to Mr. Trump and said they had an issue right now with the comments that were made, and he apologized for him, apologized to his family, apologized to the American public, and he made his peace with God. So I think for most people that follow him, he has done what he has to do. If he gets back on the issues and stays where he needs to be, he'll win this election.
I mean, it's been a rough couple of weeks, no doubt about it. How do you think he's holding up, and how do you think the family's holding up?
The family's doing really well. They're all converging here in Nevada State. They're great on the campaign trail. We've worked with both the sons and the son-in-law. His wife she's great when she's out in the public, so we'd love to see her out more. And clearly his daughter is a great spokeswoman. So having that kind of message and that kind of family behind you, the American public needs to see him.
Do you think that they could be all put to work to greater effect? I know they have all been out there, but I think there's a feeling, especially given what's happened over the past couple of weeks, that more involvement by Ivanka and Melania and sit-down interviews with them together to watch how they interact with each other would perhaps go a long way towards reassuring people and getting them to see him in a different light.
Well, that's clearly a decision the family has to make. We as Trump supporters would love to see that. It's a great family.
Did you see them together?
Yes, I do, and they're wonderful together. They interact well together, and it's a loving couple. And the family, where they interact with each other, it's a family effort, which a lot of times you don't see in a campaign, especially this large. It's great to see, and we're very proud of the family.
You ever seen a campaign this dirty?
Never in my life.
Pretty something else, isn't it?
Yeah, and experts like yourself and the rest of your team, when you see it and you do it day to day, this is something we've never seen in our lifetime, and I don't know if we ever will again.
Yeah. Let's hope not, to some extent, right?
Right.
Thank you very much, Michael McDonald, not of the Doobie Brothers, our friend. Thank you very much. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. Fox News alert as we wait for Donald Trump as he is going to do a rally in Colorado Springs. We're going to hear from him for the first time since the latest. This is a very quick news cycle, and the president told him to stop whining when it comes to the elections and whether or not they are rigged or there's some kind of fix-in from either the press or at the polls. So how will he respond? Plus, a big breach of protocol by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What we're now learning about how she upset the Secret Service agents and ambassadors when we come back live from Las Vegas. Back with this Fox News alert as we await Donald Trump in Colorado Springs today. We will hear from him first time since some comments that were made by the president told him to stop whining. We wonder if there'll be a reaction to that when Donald Trump starts speaking to the folks in Colorado Springs. John Roberts says he's expected to launch a new line of attacks, so we'll see what kind of manifestation that all takes when we hear from him in about 15 minutes or so from now. In the meantime, there are new FBI documents that reveal one of Bill Clinton's Secret Service agents helped to maintain Hillary Clinton's email server. So that's an interesting relationship. According to the redacted transcript of the agent's testimony, he was contacted by Justin Cooper, a name you probably remember from this story, a longtime senior advisor of Bill Clinton, who helped to set up that server at the Clintons' home in Chappaqua, and who was asking for his assistance with email security. The agent passed along some information to Brian Pagliano, another name you probably remember, and someone else who took the fifth in this case, the State Department employee and former Hillary Clinton campaign staffer, who was largely responsible for setting up the server. So this is the circle that had a very tight handle on how that server was operated and taken care of. So that agent, the Secret Service agent, also helped the Clinton Foundation in a case that was related to theft of information on the Clinton Foundation information systems. So what does all this mean? Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent for President Obama and host of the Renegade Republican, joins us now. Dan, welcome. Good to have you with us today. So there was a lot there in that introduction. Boil it down for us. Tell us what you think it means and why it's a potential problem.
Well, Martha, I think one of the reasons you're seeing all these whistleblowers come forward, whether it's the Diplomatic Security Service that worked for Mrs. Clinton, the Secret Service, or the FBI in relation to her email case, is a lot of these people on the inside that still talk to me and are sources for me have told me that they really see this woman as a very unique threat to our republic. They do. And that omerta that we need to keep quiet for the sake of keeping quiet is now gone. The veil of it's gone. And this story about an agent being used to assist with Clinton Foundation server issues, security issues, which is totally against the rules for the Secret Service, I'm pretty confident I know who the agent is totally unsurprising to me, and I'll bet there's a lot more there that's not being said. I'm reasonably confident of that as well, based on some stories I've heard about what actually happened over there.
Wow. This is from the FBI documents that have now been uncovered, and it's a complaint from those who were protecting her that says this: Clinton refused to do so, instead choosing to be accompanied in a limousine by her chief of staff, Huma Abedin. This frequently resulted in complaints by ambassadors who were insulted and embarrassed by this breach of protocol. Redacted explained that Clinton's treatment of DS agents on her protective detail was so contemptuous that many of them sought to be reassigned for employment elsewhere. So it's saying that rather than have those officials that were there to protect her ride along with her, and in some cases rather than having the ambassador that she was spending time with ride along with her, she booted them from the vehicle and wanted Huma Abedin to be there. Why does that matter?
Yeah. Well, it matters because, and ironically, she did treat Secret Service agents generally, but not every one of them, but poorly. She just did. And, why would, again, I say this and other agents like Gary Byrne, who was a uniformed division officer, say it? Because, Martha, it fits with a larger narrative with Hillary Clinton. Her elitist snob attitude towards the military and towards her Secret Service agents, which was pretty pervasive during my time with her, it parlays into this elitist attitude towards government, too, that the rules don't apply to her. That story you just read about the protocol. That is a major slap in the face. I remember doing overseas security advances. They have a protocol chief in the State Department who strictly handles things like this. This is a major embarrassment on a foreign trip for her not to do this and to be seen separated in the motorcade from the leader of the country she's been invited to. But Martha, again, she's an elitist. She acts like a snob. She treats people terribly, and she doesn't care about your feelings or, frankly, any protocol rules the government has. It doesn't matter. It's all about Mrs. Clinton all the time. She doesn't care. And she treated female agents terribly, too, which I find ironic because she says she's there's a war on women. Yeah, there was a war on women in the Secret Service. She waged it. She was really terrible. Wow. And I guarantee you're going to get more people start to talk about it.
And I know that, you have personal experience to back up your opinion here. I'm curious, are you getting a drift from Secret Service agents who are thinking that perhaps there will be another Clinton presidency, that they're going to have to protect her again?
Martha, there are agents and uniformed division officers that are deathly afraid of this woman. I mean, I can't explain it. It's odd that the left uses the term a unique threat to democracy to define Trump. But when you talk to people who actually know Mrs. Clinton and worked with her in the military, the Secret Service, and the Diplomatic Security Service, that's the exact same expression they use to talk about Hillary Clinton. I can't tell your listeners who to vote for. They're all adults. They can make up their own minds, okay? But I'm telling you, this woman has to be kept out of the White House. She views government as a tool for her own political ambitions. That is it. Public service means absolutely zero to the Clintons, and especially to Hillary Clinton. She's very dangerous.
No doubt she would dispute that notion, but from your experience, that's your opinion. Dan, thank you for being here today. Good to talk to you.
Losing support in the Republican stronghold of Texas. That's the word today from the Fox News decision team. It has changed its 2016 electoral scorecard, shifting Texas from solid Republican to leaning Republican. It's just the latest change from our decision team, showing Hillary Clinton gaining support in states that used to be reliably red. No Democratic presidential candidate has won Texas since Jimmy Carter back in 1976. Donald Trump set to take the stage at any minute in the critical swing state of Colorado. We will listen live when he speaks and see whether he continues pushing his claims of a so-called rigged election. Just last night, Trump told thousands of supporters in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that voter fraud is, quote, very, very common.
Believe me, there's a lot going on. Do you ever hear these people? They say there's nothing going on. People that have died 10 years ago are still voting. Illegal immigrants are voting. I mean, where are the street smarts of some of these politicians?
Most experts, I should say actual voter fraud is extremely rare. According to one study from a professor at Loyola Law School, there have been just 31 known cases of people impersonating somebody else at the polls out of 1 billion votes in American elections between 2000 and 2014. Meantime, Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, is now responding for the first time to that leaked video of her father bragging he can grope women whenever he wants because he's a celebrity. She released a statement to Fast Company magazine reading, quote, "My father's comments were clearly inappropriate and offensive, and I'm glad that he acknowledged this fact with an immediate apology to my family and the American people." Donald Trump's wife, Melania Trump, is also defending her husband. She tells Fox and Friends she warned him not to do interviews with personalities like Howard Stern and Billy Bush.
He's not the man that we heard him on the tape. Many times I gave him an advice and I didn't agree to do all the tapes on Howard Stern with Billy Bush because I know those people, they hook him on. They try to get from him some inappropriate and dirty language.
Critics also blasted Billy Bush for his comments in the video, and NBC News reports he has left the Today Show. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are set to face off tomorrow in their third and final presidential debate, moderated by Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace. Trump campaign officials confirm the mother of Sean Smith, one of the Americans killed in Benghazi, will be one of their guests at the debate. A live look here from outside the debate hall at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, that is normally reliably Republican, is all of a sudden not so red. It's more pink. It is leaning Republican, but Hillary Clinton is about to spend a bunch of money there. The Dallas Morning News endorsed her. What do you think?
Well, I think one thing to look at here is turnout. And we've been seeing in our own polls at the Wall Street Journal that the likelihood of voting, the engagement of many key constituents of Hillary Clinton, black voters and younger voters, really low in their engagement metric versus past years. Now, if Trump can ramp up his supporters and push down her supporters, maybe it becomes a more level playing field that we don't see in the polls.
But we have 3 weeks. He has 3 weeks to accomplish that. Can he do that in that amount of time?
That's a big if, and that's a lot of questions that are out there for the campaign. Certainly what Hillary Clinton needs to do is motivate her campaign and her supporters to really be wanting to vote, to know that there's a risk there. Because anytime you're too far ahead in the polls, it might have other voters thinking, well, they don't need me. My vote doesn't matter.
So tomorrow at the debate, does she kind of stand back and, you know, let Trump throw his punches, or does she get right into it with him?
Well, as you said before, she's been lying low here, trying to let the negatives on the Trump side play out, I think, in addition to, preparing for the debate. We saw last time she went head-to-head, and it's a big question about whether she tries to take the high road here, as she's spoken about on the campaign trail, and try to bring the message to the voters, or whether she feels the need to hit Donald Trump and keep him at bay.
It's going to be quite a rumble.
It will be, I think.
Glenn Hall, Wall Street Journal. Apple boss Tim Cook and Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz apparently were on a little Hillary Clinton running mates at one point. That's according to the latest WikiLeaks data dump, which includes an apparent email with names of a few dozen people Clinton's team, among them her former rival, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, also Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, who, of course, ended up on the ticket. The list also included Microsoft founder Bill Gates and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. You might remember Bloomberg considered a presidential run of his own earlier this year. Ed Henry is live in Washington. So what else are we learning about the VP selection process, Ed?
Well, John, it's interesting because in addition to Bill Gates, Melinda Gates was also on the list. Bill's wife. Obviously, they're both heavily involved in charitable endeavors together all around the world. So it gives you an idea when you add that up with Starbucks, Apple, Mukhtar Kent, the head of Coke. They were thinking about outside-the-box choices, but in the end, obviously went with a relatively conventional politician in Tim Kaine, who's a sitting U.S. senator. I think it's also interesting that John Podesta told Hillary Clinton in one email it was like food groups to him, and he broke it down along ethnic and racial lines, having a group of Hispanics, women, African-American leaders, and then those business leaders, as well as some military leaders that they looked at to maybe strengthen the Democratic ticket with someone who had a defense background. Again, in the end, they went pretty conventional. And I think the other big point to make is, as we go through these emails, there's a very candid one where John Podesta basically says to a friend that the campaign a few months ago was not going well, and said, in his words, we've taken on a lot of water. It won't be easy to pump that water out of the boat. They knew they were having a rough patch. Maybe now they're in better shape. John.
And in another one of these apparent emails, Bernie Sanders got another mention.
Well, it's interesting because John Podesta was upset that Bernie Sanders decided to attack a climate change deal that President Obama had put together, and basically said Bernie Sanders is a doofus. Says that in an email to a Democratic colleague. Why is that significant? Well, of course, there's just going to be some petty gossip back and forth anytime you go through emails like this. But I think the bigger picture, of course, is this shows, how much bitterness there was in those Democratic primaries. Now everybody's friends because they're trying to come together, John.
I might explain why Bernie Sanders didn't get the vice presidential nod.
Exactly.
Ed Henry in Washington, thanks.
Good.
The State Department is denying a top aide to Hillary Clinton talked to the FBI about cutting a deal to change the classification of one of Clinton's emails. An FBI official used the term quid pro quo, according to documents from the investigation into Clinton's private email server. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge broke this story. She is live for us now in Washington. Catherine.
Well, thank you, John. The president was drawn today into these allegations that a senior State Department executive wanted a backroom deal on the Clinton emails.
The notion or the accounts that have been put are just not true, based on what we have seen, heard, learned. Some of the more sensational implications or appearances, as you stated them, aren't based on actual events.
But here's the thing. These heavily redacted files that were released by the FBI show that an FBI official described this incident as a quid pro quo. Kennedy, who was one of then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's top lieutenants, wanted the classified Clinton emails downgraded to unclassified in exchange for more overseas posts for the FBI. The State Department today did not dispute that Kennedy attempted to make these changes after March 2015, and that is a pivotal month in an email investigation. Trying to change the emails after March 4th, 2015 would, in effect, change or alter the evidence that had been requested by Congress.
So first of all, these documents for public release through the FOIA process, not necessarily what we shared with Congress.
The documents also show that the watchdog for the U.S. intelligence community, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, was also interviewed by the and told investigators that career employees at the State Department were suspicious, those are his words, of new hires that were brought in to handle the Clinton email review, including at least one lawyer who worked at the same law firm as David Kendall. David Kendall is Mrs. Clinton's personal attorney and has been for years. We pressed the State Department on this issue today and whether there was a conflict of interest, and the State Department simply said Williams & Connolly is a big law firm. Or no conflict.
Catherine Herridge, great work as always. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Continuing coverage of the email controversy of the Clinton email investigations, Jessica Tarlov is here. She is a Democratic strategist. You've heard Republicans. They are hot under the collar because they suggest that the FBI was pressured into changing or pressured to try to change the classification of one of these top secret emails so that they could get some more cushy posts in some office overseas.
More office space, yes, overseas. I mean, both the State Department and the FBI have denied this. John Kirby has been out on every show this morning talking about it into the afternoon. And I think this will continue. I think it's good red meat for the right now when they're trying to avoid talking about, sexual allegations with Donald Trump and kind of anything but talking about that. And I think it's been an important issue. The email server, the Clinton Pay-to-Play Foundation scandal has been an important issue for the American people. I just don't think it's moving the needle anymore. And I think that with 3 weeks away. I understand why Republicans want to emphasize it. I just don't think they're going to get a lot of traction out of it.
But it does suggest that, you know, there was you do this for me, the FBI.
Well, both sides are saying that isn't what happened. And I know we just heard Donald Trump call for Patrick Kennedy, the State Department resignation, and I think they're going to continue doing it. So, of course, the suggestion of foul play like that, it's important. If we find out that is what happened, that's also important. But right now we don't know that, and we do know that people are voting 3 weeks from today, and this isn't the issue that they're voting on.
We had that famous quote from Hillary Clinton about Trump supporters being a basket of deplorables, but you saw in the vice presidential selection email that we talked about earlier, her right-hand guy, her campaign manager, John Podesta, was putting people in categories and saying, you know, if you want a Hispanic vice presidential nominee, here's your choices. Here's your choices for African Americans. What about that?
Well, I think, listen, no one ever expects that their private emails are going to be read, right? And especially that they're going to be hacked, whether it was Russia or someone else, and we think that it was Russia. So I'm sure there are things that John Podesta wishes were not down in writing. But I think this is totally normal political procedure. We know that Tim Kaine was selected to give the Clinton campaign a swing state, Virginia. Trump has pulled out ad buys from there, so obviously it was a smart pick. Tim Kaine also recently, I think it was late last week, gave a speech all in Spanish, right? I mean, he has a certain appeal, and that's important. And politics, you know, special interest politics is just a fact of life. And it's not as if the Republicans don't play it. I mean, Donald Trump tries to. Remember when he said, look at my African American, right? He was trying to play, but African Americans aren't playing.
This is just peeling back the curtain. This is just sausage making as normal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't think there's anything particularly stringent in there that happened that you would say, oh, my God, the Clinton is worse than any average political campaign.
The releases come just about every day, it seems like. Are you worried as a Democrat that there's going to be some big revelation in there somewhere that's going to blow up the course of this campaign?
I'm not sure what would blow up the course of this campaign right now. I still think that it'll be very close. I think, you know, she's sitting at about a 6 to 8 point lead right now. That could crunch back down to 2 to 4 points, which I think obviously would be a good thing for Donald Trump. But I don't expect any massive bomb to come out of these WikiLeaks exposures. But yes, they'll keep coming. I don't know if Julian Assange is going to get his internet back or not, but time will tell.
We'll all be watching. Jessica Tarlov, Democratic strategist. Thank you. Well, he's yesterday that he says back up his claim. But Politico reports those studies fall short of proving his point, and the fact-checking website PolitiFact gives Trump's claims of large-scale voter fraud its worst rating. Pants on fire. Tony Sayegh is a Republican campaign strategist, political analyst, and Fox News contributor. So these charges that Donald Trump is making, and he's suggested there is, you know, outright voter fraud, dead people voting, or that the media are conspiring to rig the election. Today, he seemed to be focused on the media. Is he right?
On the media side, absolutely. It was confirmed by a lot of what we learned from these WikiLeaks. And it was even in the coverage, frankly, John, of the WikiLeaks that we see not only the bias, but possibly even collusion of the media with the Clinton campaign. You have NBC, who covered 7 minutes on the Trump tape for every 30 seconds on the Hillary WikiLeaks. CNN, 8 minutes for every 30 seconds. CBS, 5 minutes on the Trump tape for every 30 seconds of a broadcast hour on WikiLeaks. There's clearly some level of support and sympathy on that side. Then we learn furthermore from these WikiLeaks emails that you have people from the New York Times to the Boston Globe to the Washington Post coordinating stories with the Clinton campaign. In one case, a Politico journalist actually tried to ask for permission to use certain quotes, gave the campaign the right to even write their own quotes for a piece. This is beyond what we've always known existed, which is liberal bias. On the voter fraud side, look, everybody universally accepts voter fraud exists. Democrats make this claim as much as Republicans. When you talk about the fact-checking websites, however, and they're kind of claiming Trump being wrong, they've been wrong in the past, too. They said John McCain was wrong in 2008 about Acorn. And we learned in 2010 that there was voter fraud perpetrated by Acorn. 18 people went to jail as a result. And meanwhile, all along during the 2008 campaign, we were told by the media that this was fabricated by the McCain campaign.
But some Trump, even some Trump advocates are saying he's got to be careful, because if he's telling his people that this election is lost before it's even taken place, his people, his voters, are going to stay home.
On that point of strategy, it's absolutely right. You can't allow people to feel that they can't impact the outcome. And the truth of the matter is they certainly still can. And that's where I think Donald Trump has to walk the fine line by keeping on a message, by the way, John, that's worked for him throughout this campaign. And it's also worked for Bernie Sanders throughout this campaign. It's that whole idea that the macro dynamics of this country are rigged against the average person, whether it's the economy, whether it's government in Washington, whether it's the voting system, that if you're the average guy, you're always losing out to these larger elite interests that both parties, frankly, have represented. So Trump on the overall message is right to make this about a rigged system, but he can't do it at the expense of enthusiasm of his own voters.
Well, he can't seem to get out of his own way sometimes. I mean, since that tape came out, he's down quite a few points, even in states like Texas. He is, you know, at least they are, the Republican, they're not doing as well as they typically have.
I'll owe a lot of my Democratic colleagues steak dinners if Hillary Clinton wins Texas. I think it's nearly impossible that she does. Look, there's no doubt there's fluctuation in the polls. Donald Trump in the immediate wake was down by around 11, 12 points. This race is back down to about 7. I suspect if he does well in the debate tomorrow, that you'll probably even get a narrower and tighter race as well. But look at some of these swing states like Ohio, like North Carolina, like Nevada, all within a 1 or 2 point margin of error. And these are totally winnable states for Donald Trump right now.
All right. Tony Saig, a Republican strategist. We'll see if you buy any steak dinners. Tony, thank you.
You got it. Thanks.
All right, I'm John Scott in for Shepard Smith on this Tuesday. That debate tomorrow night is going to be fascinating. We know you'll be watching here on Fox. Your World is up after the break with Neil Cavuto. He's live from the debate site.
I want to go right now to Steve Wynn. Again, just to put Steve Wynn in perspective in this town and how big a deal he is, keep in mind that he has overseen construction of or operations for all the biggest name brands you see behind me in this shot. I was just reviewing it here, but they include the Golden Nugget Atlantic City, the Mirage, Treasure Island, the Bellagio. I could go on and on. The Wynn Resort, and now very big in Macau, all over the world. And he joins me now. Steve Wynn, very good to have you.
Go on and on. I was. Hi, Neil.
Yeah, right. Keep it going. Keep it going. Steve, it's good to have you. It wasn't too long ago you were commenting on the dysfunctional circus campaign season. I guess it hasn't eased up. But with 3 weeks to go and no signs that that's going to change, what do you make of the whole race?
I was reading something by Buckley, and it's rubbed off on me. And I can only say that having experienced the both candidates' political inspirations and struck by their profusion, I am now ready to believe that the earth is flat.
That's not too bad, actually.
That is to say,
you're doing it, yeah.
The thing is, I think the conversation's all wrong. I don't think that the dialogue has shown the proper respect for the process itself. What's going on in America is complicated, important, and worth serious public discussion. We take in 3.1 trillion. We spend 3.7 trillion. That leaves a gap of 500 billion or 600 billion. That's 50 billion a month in new money being printed, which is increasing the money supply and directly impacting and destroying the quality of every paycheck in America and therefore the living standard of all the people in America. That conversation is relevant, not to mention, a serious discussion about globalization, trade, immigration. But instead, Neil, I feel that the exchanges have devolved. I think the conversation's all wrong, and consequently, I don't feel like I can be part of it intelligently.
Do you have a candidate you prefer? I mean, do one of the candidates' prescriptions address what you talked about more than the other?
Well, I know both people, and it would be fair to say that they're both intelligent. I tend to respect anybody who's willing to throw their hat into the public arena these days and put up with all of the contingent events that go along with public service and public campaigns. When you ask me if I have a preference, I'm so, as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm so focused on the fact that the conversation doesn't address any of the things that I think are important. I think our political dialogue in America is distorted and completely off track. So I can know the candidates, and I've enjoyed private time with Donald and certainly with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Melania Trump is an elegant, lovely woman, and Trump has done a fabulous job with his children, which you and I both know is an achievement all by itself.
Absolutely.
So these people all have something to recommend them. I don't tend to pay as much. It seems to me that on the subject of the presidential sexual contact behavior, that being oversexed seems to be a qualification for a president the past 2 generations. But what I'm looking for.
So will all the charges that have come up against Donald Trump in that regard, you don't think they're worth getting into? That's a waste of time?
Look, this discussion of the sex lives of our politicians is a distraction. I played golf with Chris Dodd several years ago in the midst of the Clinton controversies while the president was in his second term, and the Monica Lewinsky issues were floating around. And on the 18th green, I said to Chris Dodd, who was a senator, of course, at the time, and a very important one, we ought to stop talking about sex with our politicians. People always lie about sex. And then Chris Dodd looked up at me, Neil, and said, Steve, some people lie during sex. I thought that was pretty cool. So
and that was
as far
that. But I guess but you're right. It's become part of the subject here as an exploration of Hillary Clinton's emails. And Donald Trump has come out to say, I'm getting a raw deal. This is a rigged process. Disproportionate number of stories on me, none on her that are controversial. Even going so far as to question whether the voting is going to be rigged in this country. How do you feel about that?
Well, if in fact there was serious voter fraud in America, I don't think there's a person in this country that wouldn't be really up in arms about it, including myself. We have known for many, many years that there's mischief afoot in some of the urban precincts, going back to the Kennedy election in '60, which I covered as a news director of the radio station at the University of Pennsylvania, where I went. But to suggest that this has now reached epidemic proportions is a troubling assertion, and I hope it's not true. And the idea that it might be true is frightening.
Well, Steve, the president commented on Donald Trump's musings in that regard, saying he ought to quit whining and state his case to the American people. What did you think of that?
I think that President Obama is very facile on all issues that are political. I wish that he was as direct and as prompt in his responses to the major issues that face the country as he is on issues that bear political relevance. That's how I feel about that.
That's pretty direct there. Let me get your sense of Donald Trump and his tax situation. And you're very successful casino operator, hotel operator overall, and much has been made of this reported $900+ million loss back in 1995. Hillary Clinton says it's proof that he's a horrible businessman. What do you think of that?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, and as it's been discussed in the public forum, this point has not been made. People who make money in business pay tax as a percentage of the profits quite appropriately. When people lose money in business, then those losses tend to reduce overall the profitability of the business. So adjusting losses against profits to get the real profit of a business is a perfectly sound approach for tax policy. Now, the fact that we've highlighted, or we seem to have allegedly highlighted, the fact that Donald Trump's, one of his investments went very badly and he lost $900 million, I guess at his scale, you can make 900 or lose 900. But the notion that a $900 million loss should be taken against $900 million profits is perfectly logical. It's what we do in our private lives with every taxpayer. What we see in this particular subject, rather than a focused, perspective discussion of the concept of business losses against business profits, instead it's become a political tool, another arsenal in this disgraceful exchange of fire that is really off the point. And that's the reason, as I said before, that I think the dialogue's all wrong. Conversation is misdirected.
You know, one other issue that's come up in this back and forth about taxes is the rich should pay their fair share. And that fair share would go all the way up to 65% on guys like you with their estates when they leave this fine world. What do you think is a fair share? Well, maybe, but what do you think of that? What is a fair share to you?
Well, it's a perfectly intelligent question. So how do we define fair share? 70% of the tax revenues paid to the United States government in income tax come from 5% of the citizens. Now, that would suggest that something unfair is going on. So when you hear a politician say fair share, you're talking about hypocritical political propaganda. You are not talking about an intelligent discussion of who is paying what and who isn't paying taxes. It's a simple subject. But this is one of those perfect examples of the distortion in conversation. I don't say that defensively because I'm a high-earning person. I've paid a couple $100 million of taxes since 2000. And I've been very lucky to be able to pay those taxes. It's a privilege to have earned the money to be able to pay the taxes. But the fact of the matter is, the minute someone talks about fair share, you're probably talking to a thief. 70% of the tax revenues on personal income tax in America are paid by 5% of the people.
So would you be more open to what Donald Trump is espousing, that where you cut the taxes across the board for everybody?
Well, first of all, I think his big tax cut was on corporate tax, if I'm not mistaken, right. Neil. It's hard to sort out the policies when you just have the TV stuff at your disposal. The corporate tax rate is one that should be addressed. For example, in business, in life, in the raising of our children or the running of a business, what do we do fundamentally? The big idea is that we encourage the behavior, we reinforce the behavior that we wish to encourage. Now, with all that money offshore, because the taxes in America are excessively high for businesses, what is wrong with saying, hey, you bring back that 2 or 3 trillion, and if you could show me that 20 cents on every dollar is going to go directly to creating a job, that's your tax. Create the job. Bring the money back. Uncle Sam won't collect a dime. Go create jobs. Create more taxpayers. People that create jobs create taxpayers, which benefits society as a whole.
That's a very good point. So it sounds like your philosophy, but your philosophy seems more in line with Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton. Am I right?
Not necessarily. Well, I thought you were going to say it's more in line with Trump than Clinton. I'd be very anxious to have a private conversation with Hillary. That's what Bill calls his wife.
Well, that's
Hillary,
what I meant. So I thought more in Donald Trump, more in keeping with Donald Trump, that his policies, his economic views are more your own.
But that's the point. I haven't had this conversation with Hillary Clinton, and I think it would be fascinating to have the conversation with her, because I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Hillary Clinton didn't agree. But the God lives in the details. What do you do with the money that you bring back tax-free from abroad? If you can prove that it's going directly to the creation of jobs, or a great portion of it is, then that benefits society at least as much as any tax might. So there's a discussion here. But we're not having it, are we, Neil? We're not.
No, we're not. We started something here. But Stephen, I want to thank you very, very much. The issues that Steve Wynn raised at Wynn Resorts, you think they'll bring that up in the debate tomorrow? Let's hope so. The president going after Donald Trump today, saying he's a whiner. And, look, that's fine. There are a lot of whiners out there. But methinks you should be very careful, Mr. President, on this subject. Listen.
Look, if I watched Fox News, I wouldn't vote for me. Look, I'm being serious here. I mean, that's the story that's been told. And I haven't, turned on Fox News or listened to conservative talk radio yet today. If you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, like, folks who make me mad. I don't know where they find them.
Well, wait a minute. If you say you don't watch us, how would you know? Anyway, welcome back, everybody. I want to get into that a little bit with Karl Rove. Now, Karl, you were actually kind of saying much the same earlier today that he's got to avoid, that is Donald Trump, the appearance of just whining and complaining, turn it around, sort of pound the issues that have worked for him in the past and focus on that. I just found it a little rich myself hearing the president bemoan that kind of behavior, but it is what it is. What do you think?
Yeah, well, look, I worked with President Obama when he was Senator Obama. He's one of the most thin-skinned people I ever met in Washington, and he whines a lot. And I thought two things. First of all, I thought it was completely inappropriate at a news conference with the visiting Prime Minister of Italy that he allowed himself to look like he was appearing at a Democrat campaign rally as a stump speaker. He, in my opinion, standing there with the Italian Prime Minister, he should have said, you know what, I want to reassure the American people and our friends around the world that American elections will be fair and that the outcome will be respected. And there's plenty of time for politics at other times, but today we're here with the Italian Prime Minister, and we're talking about the other subjects in the American presidential election, and moved on. Instead of using it as a chance to slap down Donald Trump and make himself look petulant and condescending, as he so often does when he adopts this kind of seizes these kind of moments.
One of the things that you think about, too, in that kind of a venue with a foreign leader is Donald Trump could win this election. I know the polls are what they are now, but he could be the next president. So for the present president to be saying that, it just looks bad in that environment. But I want to switch to the issue. Go ahead, finish that thought.
Oh, it's petty, and it's unnecessary. And it shows how the president is a relatively undisciplined person when he doesn't have enough handlers around him saying, remember, Mr. President, you are the president. He slips back into, I'm a Chicago state senator, and I've got to say nasty things about the opposition.
They're going to probably be doing a lot of nasty exchanges tomorrow night. You said you wanted to keep that to the issues. And that this could be pivotal for Donald Trump. But will it be enough, even if he puts in a very good night, to change some of the trends in these polls? Not all, but they don't look good right now. But how would you describe it?
Well, look, I don't think, I've made the argument before that it's not just the debate, it's what happens before and after the debate. So if he has a good night tomorrow night, he needs to show discipline in the days that follow and not do what he did after debate 2 and not do what he did after debate 1. Debate 1, we spent 5 days listening to him attack former Miss Universe for being overweight and having bad dietary habits. After debate 2, we spent a week watching him go after fellow Republicans and, declare civil war inside the Republican Party. He needs to stay focused on her and President Obama and delivering a message of change, of saying on the big issues they've done the wrong things and I'll do something differently. And it can't just be a good debate performance. He's running out of time, and the days that remain to him after that debate ought to be devoted to things that will cause people to say, you know what, I'm undecided, or I was for her, I'm for him now.
Do you think there's enough time for him to do that, turn this thing around?
Well, I think it's awful hard. I mean, think about it. He's ahead in Iowa. He's ahead in the Real Clear Politics average in Ohio, but he's behind in Florida and North Carolina and Nevada and New Hampshire. And he needs, if he won all of those, he would be at 269 electoral college votes, and he'd need Maine too.